The whiskey turned bitter on my tongue as Marcus's words echoed through the spacious dining hall. Just another waste of space. He announced to the room full of family members, distant cousins, and so-called friends who had gathered for our grandmother's 75th birthday celebration. My fingernails dug crescents into my palms as conversation around me halted. His voice somehow both muffled and painfully clear through the sudden silence, taking up resources that could go to someone who actually matters. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 22 pairs of eyes swiveled between Marcus and me, waiting to see if the family disappointment would dare respond to the golden child's proclamation. I felt each heartbeat in my throat as I carefully folded the embroidered napkin that had been passed down through generations. A family heirloom I wasn't worthy to touch, according to my brother. I placed it beside my barely touched plate of home-cooked roast beef. "Thank you for your honesty, Marcus," I said, standing slowly. "And thank you for finally saying out loud what you've been thinking for years." I smoothed down the simple black dress I'd chosen specifically to avoid criticism. "My name is Eliza. I'm 34 and a self-made entrepreneur. This is the story of how I transformed my brother's public humiliation into the most valuable lesson he ever learned." "Eliza, don't," my cousin Jamie whispered, reaching for my hand. I squeezed his fingers gently, then let go. "It's fine," I assured him quietly. "Marcus is right. I should know my place." The smirk on my brother's face was worth memorizing. That self-satisfied expression of a man who believed he'd won, who thought he'd finally put the family embarrassment in her rightful place. If only he knew. I walked out of the dining room with my head high, past the family portraits where I was always positioned in the back, past the living room where I'd spent countless holidays listening to Marcus's achievements being celebrated while mine were footnotes, past the kitchen where I'd helped grandmother prepare this very meal while Marcus arrived just in time to receive praise for bringing an expensive bottle of wine. Jamie caught up to me at the front door, his face flushed with anger on my behalf. "I'm so sorry," he said, genuine distress in his eyes. I had no idea he would. I pulled him close, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the hint of cinnamon that always clung to him. "This isn't your fault," I assured him. "You're the only one who's ever stood up for me. I'll talk to him. Make him apologize." "No," I tucked a strand of his sandy hair behind his ear. "No more apologizing for him. No more making excuses. He said what he's been thinking our entire lives. At least now we have clarity. Eliza, please don't let him drive you away from the family. Grandmother needs you." Jamie's eyes pleaded with me. I kissed his cheek. "He can't drive me away from what matters. I'll call grandmother tomorrow, okay? This just isn't the celebration she deserves." Jamie nodded reluctantly, and I walked down the stone pathway to my car, watching the family home grow smaller in my rearview mirror, its windows glowing like accusatory eyes in the gathering dusk. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the main road. I ignored it, knowing it was probably my mother trying to smooth things over, or perhaps my father calling to explain how I'd misunderstood Marcus's joke. They weren't bad people, just blind ones, too dazzled by their son's charisma and conventional success to see the cruelty behind his perfect smile. But I had more important calls to make. I voice-dialed my assistant as I merged onto the highway. "Rebecca, I know it's late. Ms. Winters, is everything all right?" Rebecca had been with me for 8 years, since before the world knew who Eliza Winters really was. She could read my moods through a phone line with uncanny accuracy. "Move forward with the Lexington Street acquisition." Silence. Then, "Ma'am? We were holding off until next quarter." "Not anymore. Make the offer tomorrow morning." I switched lanes, accelerating past a slow-moving truck. "The premium will be substantial if we rush." "I don't care about the premium. Make it happen." "Eliza," Rebecca dropped the formalities, which she only did when she thought I was making an emotional decision. "This is a $50 million property. What happened at dinner?" "Marcus called me a waste of space," I said flatly. "In front of everyone. Made it clear that someone like me will never be good enough for the Winters family name. That entitled jackass." Rebecca's fingers were already flying across her keyboard. I could hear the rapid tapping through the phone. "I'll have legal draw up the offer within the hour. Want me to include his apartment specifically in the inspection schedule?" "Number, let him find out with everyone else. And Rebecca? Make sure the offer is non-negotiable. Cash deal. Close in 30 days. "With pleasure, Ms. Winters. Anything else?" I thought for a moment, the lights of the city blurring past my windshield. "Yes, set up meetings with all the current tenants next week. Except apartment 12B. That one gets a formal letter." 12B? That's your brother's unit? Why waste my valuable time on someone who's just taking up space? I could almost hear Rebecca's smile through the phone. "Consider it done. You heading home now?" "Yes. I need to prepare for a busy month." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I hung up and drove the rest of the way to my penthouse in silence, the city sprawling below like a constellation of earthbound stars. Each light represented a person with their own struggles and triumphs, reminding me how far I'd come from the awkward, bookish girl who'd been told repeatedly that she'd never amount to anything remarkable. Marcus Winters thought he knew me. He thought his business degree and corporate job gave him the right to judge my worth. He knew I'd chosen a different path, turning down college to start working at 19, investing every penny I saved into my first property, a rundown duplex that I renovated myself on weekends while working 2 jobs during the week. What he didn't know was that the waste of space he dismissed had built a real estate empire while staying completely under the radar. That Horizon Properties, the company that owned the luxury apartment building he'd moved into 6 months ago to flaunt his new promotion, was mine. That I'd spent the last 15 years acquiring buildings, renovating properties, and strategically positioning myself to become one of the most influential property owners in the city. He didn't know because I'd kept it quiet, using holding companies and trusted executives as the face of my operations. I'd learned early that real power came from being underestimated, from letting arrogant people like Marcus think they held all the cards while I silently collected the whole deck. As I pulled into my building's private garage, my phone lit up with a call from my grandmother. That was faster than expected. I answered immediately. She was the one family member I would never ignore. "Eliza, dear." Her voice was soft but clear, without the frailty most people her age exhibited. "I'm so sorry about what happened. It's not your fault, Grandma Rose. I should have stopped it. Should have said something. You can't fight all my battles. Besides, some things need to be said out loud so everyone can hear them." She was quiet for a moment. "He doesn't speak for all of us, you know. Your father is furious with him." I almost laughed. "Is he? That would be a first. People can surprise you, Eliza. Sometimes they just need a push in the right direction." "Maybe." I wasn't convinced. "How's the rest of the party going?" "Oh, I sent everyone home, told them I had a headache. No point celebrating when my favorite granddaughter was driven away." The affection in her voice warmed something cold inside me. "I'm sorry I ruined your birthday." "Nonsense. You didn't ruin anything. Marcus did that all on his own." She paused. "He's always been jealous of you, you know." This time I did laugh. "Jealous? Of me? Grandma, he's had everything handed to him his entire life. What could he possibly be jealous of?" "Your freedom. Your courage. The way you've made your own path instead of following the one laid out for you." She sighed. "It's easier to follow the expected route. Takes real bravery to forge your own." I hadn't thought about it that way. I should let you rest. "Come for tea tomorrow? Just us?" "I'd like that." I smiled into the phone. "Love you, Grandma." "Love you too, my brave girl." I ended the call and headed up to my penthouse, pouring myself a bourbon and settling onto the balcony to watch the city pulse with life. Somewhere out there, Marcus Winters was probably recounting his triumph to whoever would listen, unaware that his perfect luxury apartment, the one he'd bragged about at every family gathering for months, was about to become a chess piece in a game he didn't know we were playing. My phone buzzed. Jamie calling. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting myself to separate my anger at Marcus from my affection for my cousin. He didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. But some battles couldn't be avoided. By morning, my phone had logged 23 missed calls and 16 text messages. Most from family members either apologizing or demanding I apologize to Marcus for storming out and making a scene. The family narrative was already being rewritten to cast me as the villain. It was predictable, almost comforting in its familiarity. I was reviewing property assessments over breakfast when Rebecca called. The offer has been submitted. They're scrambling to respond, but our terms are clear, accept by end of business today or we walk. Perfect. Any word from the management company? They're preparing tenant notifications now. Should go out by email this afternoon, paper copies to follow tomorrow. Make sure 12B's letter is hand-delivered. I want confirmation he received it personally. Already arranged? Special courier, signature required. I'll have a copy of the signed receipt sent to you. Rebecca paused. Your grandmother called the office. My heart skipped. Is everything okay? She's fine. Said to remind you about tea at 2, and to tell you she's proud of you. Whatever that means. I smiled. It means I have the best grandmother in the world. Anything else? Jamie's been trying to reach you. Called the office 3 times this morning. I sighed. I'll call him back. Any other family members? Just your mother. I told her you were in meetings all day. Thank you, Rebecca. That's what you pay me for. She hesitated. Are you sure about this, Eliza? Once it's done. I'm sure. Sometimes people need to learn the hard way that words have consequences. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. At 1:30, I headed to my grandmother's house, the same modest Victorian where she'd lived for 50 years, refusing all offers to move to something more suitable as the family fortunes grew. She was waiting on the front porch, a tea service already set up on the small table between 2 rocking chairs. Her silver hair was neatly styled, her clothes simple but elegant. At 75, Rose Winters still commanded attention without demanding it, a skill I'd spent years trying to emulate. Right on time, she said as I climbed the steps, and looking much better than last night. I kissed her cheek. Amazing what a good night's sleep and the prospect of revenge can do for a woman's complexion. She laughed, gesturing for me to sit. So it's revenge now, is it? What happened to living well is the best revenge? Who says I can't do both? I accepted the cup of tea she offered, living very well while also teaching my dear brother a valuable lesson about respect. And what lesson would that be? Her eyes twinkled with curiosity. That's between Marcus and me. For now. I sipped my tea. This is new. Ceylon? Don't change the subject, Eliza. What are you planning? I studied her face, wondering how much to share. Let's just say Marcus is about to discover that his waste of space sister has been taking up quite a lot of valuable space in this city, including the building he lives in. Grandma Rose's eyebrows rose. Horizon Properties is yours. It wasn't a question. I shouldn't have been surprised. Very little escaped her notice. How long have you known? Since you bought the Riverside complex 4 years ago? The roses planted in the courtyard gave you away. The same heritage varieties I taught you about when you were 10. I smiled, remembering those garden lessons, the hours spent learning the names and care of each flower. I never could fool you. No, but you fooled everyone else quite successfully, including your brother. She set down her teacup. What are you going to do, Eliza? Evict him? Nothing so dramatic. Just making sure he understands exactly who he's dealing with. I leaned back in the chair. Did you know he's been subletting his 2nd bedroom against the terms of his lease? Charging double what he pays in rent? That sounds like Marcus. Always looking for the angle. She studied me. You're not going to use that against him, are you? I'm going to use everything against him, Grandma. Just like he's used everything against me my entire life. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. She reached over and took my hand. Be careful, dear one. Revenge might feel sweet in the moment, but it leaves a bitter aftertaste. This isn't just about revenge. It's about respect. About finally being seen for who I am, not who they think I am. I squeezed her hand. Don't worry, I'm not going to destroy him. Just educate him. Well, education has never hurt anyone, I suppose. She refilled our cups. Now tell me about that new property on Lexington Street, the one you're buying today. I laughed. Is there anything you don't know? Plenty, but not much about what matters to me. Her smile was warm. And you, my dear, have always mattered most of all. We spent the next hour talking about business and family and the intersection of the two. By the time I left, the sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the lawn where I'd once played alone while Marcus held court with his friends, deliberately excluding me from their games. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Rebecca? The Lexington deal is done. They accepted our offer an hour ago. Congratulations, you now own the most expensive apartment building in the downtown district. And the tenant notifications? All sent. Our courier confirmed delivery to 12B at 3:42 p.m. Signed for by Marcus Winters personally. I smiled. Perfect. Any reaction yet? Nothing directly, but he's called the management office 3 times in the last hour. They're following protocol, referring all inquiries to the Tenant Relations Department at Horizon's main office, which won't be taking calls until Monday. Exactly. He's left increasingly agitated voicemails. Forward them to me. I could use some entertainment tonight. Already done. Also, your mother called again. Said it's urgent. I sighed. It's always urgent with her. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And Jamie? He's called twice more. I'll call him back. He deserves that much. As I drove home, I listened to the voicemails Marcus had left. The first was professionally terse, demanding clarification about the erroneous notification he'd received. The second was more agitated, insisting there must be some mistake, and demanding an immediate response. The third was openly hostile, threatening legal action and mentioning his quote, connections in real estate law. He had no idea those connections all ultimately reported to me. I called Jamie as I pulled into my garage. He answered on the first ring. Finally! I've been trying to reach you all day. Sorry, it's been busy. I kept my tone light. How's damage control going at Casa Winters? It's a disaster. Mom and Dad are fighting, Marcus is acting like he's the victim, and Grandma Rose basically told everyone to get out of her house last night. He sounded exhausted, but that's not why I'm calling. Marcus got some letter today about his apartment building being sold. He's freaking out. Oh? Why would that be a problem? Apartment buildings change ownership all the time. I smiled to myself as I rode the elevator to my penthouse. Apparently, the new management company is implementing strict enforcement of all lease terms. Something about unauthorized subletting and lease violations. Jamie paused. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Me? How would I know anything about real estate? Eliza. His tone was warning but amused. What did you do? Nothing yet. But the day is still young. I entered my apartment, kicking off my heels. Let's just say Marcus might want to start looking for a new place to live, one he can actually afford on his own salary without illegal subletting. You own his building. It wasn't a question. How long have you? 6 years for that particular property. But I've been in real estate for 15. Silence. Then, holy shit, Eliza, your Horizon properties? Among other things. I don't even know what to say. Does anyone else know? Just Grandma Rose. And now you. He laughed, a sound of pure delight. This is the best thing I've ever heard. The absolute best. Wait until Marcus finds out that the waste of space owns the space he lives in. That's the idea. When are you going to tell him? I smiled, pouring myself a glass of wine. I'm thinking Monday morning. In person. With witnesses. Can I be there? Please tell me I can be there. Front row seat, cousin. I promise. This almost makes up for last night. His voice sobered. He had no right to say those things, Eliza. No right at all. I know. But in a way, I'm glad he did. It's time for everything to come out in the open. Well, I, for one, can't wait to see his face when he realizes who he's been dealing with all this time. Jamie sounded genuinely excited. The golden boy finally gets his comeuppance. It's not about bringing him down, Jamie. It's about standing up. There's a difference. If you say so. Still gonna enjoy watching him squirm. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I spent the rest of the evening reviewing the Lexington Street property details and preparing for Monday's confrontation. By Sunday night, Marcus had left 12 more voicemails, each more desperate than the last, as he realized his perfect apartment and his lucrative subletting scheme were in jeopardy. Monday morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of flawless autumn day that seemed designed for momentous occasions. I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. My grandmother's pearl necklace, my only adornment. Power didn't need to announce itself with flash. True authority whispered rather than shouted. I arrived at Marcus's building precisely at 9 o'clock, Rebecca at my side with a leather portfolio containing all the necessary documentation. The doorman nodded respectfully as we entered the marble lobby. Good morning, Ms. Winters. Good morning, Thomas. How's your daughter doing at college? His face lit up with surprise and pleasure. Very well, ma'am. Thank you for asking. First in her class this semester. That scholarship is well-deserved, then, I smiled, noting the confusion on Rebecca's face. I made it a point to know everyone who worked in my buildings, something the previous owners had never bothered with. Mr. Winters is expecting you, Thomas said, lowering his voice. He's been pacing the lobby for 20 minutes. Has he indeed? Well, don't keep him waiting on my account. Thomas gestured toward the seating area where Marcus stood staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back rigid with tension. He wore his standard power suit, navy blue, custom-tailored to emphasize his athletic build, but even from behind I could see the strain in his posture. Marcus, I called, my voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged space. He turned, confusion flickering across his face before settling into annoyed recognition. Eliza? What are you doing here? I'm here for our appointment. I approached with measured steps, Rebecca a half pace behind me. Appointment? I don't have an appointment with you. I'm waiting for someone from Horizon Properties. He checked his watch impatiently. The new owner of this building, apparently. Yes, I said simply, extending my hand. Eliza Winters, CEO, and majority shareholder of Horizon Properties. Pleasure to formally make your acquaintance. The blood drained from his face so quickly I momentarily worried he might faint. That's not possible. I assure you it is. I gestured to Rebecca. My executive assistant can provide all the necessary documentation, if you'd like to verify. Marcus stared at me as though I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. You own this building? Yes. Along with 27 others throughout the city, including the new acquisition on Lexington Street. I smiled pleasantly. Shall we discuss your lease violations somewhere more private? The management office, perhaps. He followed us to the office in stunned silence, his normally confident stride reduced to a mechanical shuffle. The property manager, Alicia Chin, was waiting with coffee and a carefully neutral expression. She'd been with Horizon for 5 years and was one of my most trusted employees. Good morning, Ms. Winters, she said, standing as we entered. Everything is prepared as requested. Thank you, Alicia. This is Mr. Winters, one of our tenants in 12B. He has some questions about the ownership transition. Alicia's eyes flickered with recognition, but her professional demeanor never wavered. Of course. Please, have a seat. Marcus sank into a chair, still staring at me. How long? How long what? I took the seat opposite him, smoothing my skirt. How long have you owned this building? This particular property? Since 2018. I accepted a cup of coffee from Alicia. Black, no sugar, correct? She nodded, confirming she remembered my preference. 6 years, Marcus whispered. You've owned this building for 6 years. Among others. Horizon Properties has been operating since 2009. His eyes narrowed suddenly. This is why I got the apartment so easily. Why the application process was expedited. I sipped my coffee calmly. On the contrary, your application was processed exactly like everyone else's. You qualified based on your income and credit score. The fact that you're my brother had nothing to do with it. Then why? Because I don't mix business with personal matters, unlike you. I nodded to Rebecca, who opened her portfolio and extracted a document. This is a copy of your lease agreement. Section 8, paragraph 3 specifically prohibits subletting without written permission from management. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Lots of people sublet. It's common practice. Common practice doesn't override a legally binding contract. I placed the document on the table between us. We have documentation of your arrangement with, I consulted another paper Rebecca provided, Michael Delaney. You've been charging him $2,800 per month for the second bedroom. Your total rent is $3,200. That's not only a violation of your lease, it's profiteering. You're collecting $1,200 more than your actual rent, while using the address to claim a tax deduction for the full amount as a business expense. I met his gaze steadily. Did you think no one would notice? The flush that had been creeping up his neck reached his face. Are you having me investigated? Not at all. We review all tenant activities as part of our standard management protocols. You're not special, Marcus. Just non-compliant. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. What do you want, Eliza? Money? An apology? Is this about what I said at Grandma's birthday? I laughed softly. Not everything is about you, Marcus. This is simply business. Bullshit. You're doing this to punish me. For what? Calling me a waste of space? I kept my voice light, conversational. That would be quite petty, wouldn't it? Using a multi-million-dollar real estate empire to settle a personal score? His jaw clenched. If not that, then what? As I said, it's business. Horizon Properties is implementing stricter lease enforcement across all our buildings. Your violations simply happen to come up during the standard review. And I'm supposed to believe that's a coincidence? I shrugged. Believe what you like. The facts remain the same. You violated your lease in multiple ways. We have 3 options moving forward. Rebecca handed me another document, which I pushed toward Marcus. Option 1. You terminate the subletting arrangement immediately, pay a penalty of $5,000 for the violation, and continue your lease under probationary status. $5,000? That's... Option 2, I continued as if he hadn't spoken. You vacate the premises within 30 days, forfeiting your security deposit to cover damages and unauthorized modifications to the unit. His face paled again. What unauthorized modifications? The built-in shelving in the second bedroom, the removed wall between the kitchen and dining area, and the ceiling-mounted projector in the living room, all completed without permits or management approval. And option 3? His voice had lost its usual confidence. You purchased the unit at market value. We're converting several floors to condominiums, and your unit qualifies for the program. Purchase? At what price? $1. $2 million. I smiled at his expression. The building's location and recent renovations have substantially increased its value. You're aware of this, of course, given your connections in real estate. Marcus slumped back in his chair. This is insane. You know I can't afford that. Then options 1 or 2 remain available. We'll need your decision by the end of the week. I stood, smoothing my jacket. Unless you have other questions? He stared up at me, a complicated mix of emotions playing across his face. Anger, humiliation, and something that might have been reluctant respect. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? About your company, your success? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Would it have changed how you saw me? How you treated me? Of course it would have. And that's exactly why I didn't tell you. I gathered my things, nodding to Rebecca and Alicia. Success shouldn't determine someone's worth, Marcus. If you only respect people because of what they've achieved, you don't really respect them at all. Eliza, wait. He stood, blocking my path to the door. This isn't fair. Fair? I raised an eyebrow. Was it fair when you told our entire family I was a waste of space? Was it fair when you sabotaged my college application because you didn't want me attending the same university? Was it fair when you convinced Dad not to loan me the money to start my first business? Quote, his face registered shock. How did you know about? I have always known exactly who you are, Marcus. That's the difference between us. You saw what you wanted to see. A failure, a disappointment, someone beneath you. I saw the truth. A privileged man so insecure about his own worth that he needed to diminish others to feel successful. That's not. It is. And we both know it. I stepped around him. You have until Friday to decide. Choose wisely. I walked out with my head high, Rebecca matching my stride. Neither of us spoke until we were in the car, privacy glass raised between us and the driver. That, Rebecca said with quiet admiration, was the most professionally executed takedown I've ever witnessed. I exhaled slowly, tension draining from my shoulders. Was it too much? Not even close. After what he said to you, I'd have been tempted to evict him on the spot. That's not the point of this exercise. Then what is the point, if you don't mind me asking? I stared out the window as the city passed by. Accountability, growth, maybe even reconciliation eventually. You want to reconcile with him, after everything? He's still my brother. Family is complicated. Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. What do you think he'll choose? Option 1. His pride won't let him move out, and he can't afford to buy. And if he decides to fight it? Go public with the fact that his sister is targeting him? I smiled. Let him. Horizon's legal department would love to explain in court how we discovered his tax fraud and illegal subletting. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. Mission accomplished? Popcorn, I replied. Phase 1 complete. Stand by for fallout. The fallout came faster than expected. By lunchtime, my mother was calling, her voice shrill with indignation. What have you done to your brother? He's absolutely beside himself. Hello to you too, Mom. Don't be smart with me, young lady. Marcus says you're threatening to evict him from his apartment. That you claim to own his building? What kind of cruel joke is this? I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. It's not a joke, Mom. I do own the building, along with many others. I've been in real estate for 15 years. Silence stretched so long I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Finally, that's not possible. You never even finished college. Neither did Steve Jobs. Or Mark Zuckerberg. Education is valuable, but it's not the only path to success. But how? Where did you get the money to start? I saved. I worked multiple jobs. I took risks. I did everything you and Dad always told Marcus to do, except I did it without the safety net of family support. Another long pause. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me if I had? The question hung between us, weighted with years of dismissal and doubt. Of course we would have. Really? When I told you I was starting a small property management company, Dad said it was cute, that I thought I could compete in a man's industry. When I bought my first building, Marcus told everyone it was a money pit that would bankrupt me. When I made my first $1 million and tried to contribute to Grandma's medical bills, you said you didn't need charity from me. We didn't know, because you never asked. My voice remained calm, years of practice keeping the hurt at bay. You never once asked how my business was doing. Not really. You asked if I was still playing with real estate like it was a hobby I'd eventually outgrow. Eliza, that's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. I softened my tone. Look, I'm not trying to hurt Marcus. I'm enforcing the rules that apply to all tenants. He broke his lease agreement. There are consequences for that. He says you're charging him $5,000 as a penalty. That's excessive? That's standard for our luxury properties. The penalty is outlined in the lease he signed. He didn't know you owned the building. He wouldn't have moved there if he'd known. Why not? It's one of the best buildings in the city. Are you saying he'd choose an inferior living situation just to avoid any connection to me? Her silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I checked my watch. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, Mom. Was there anything else? Your father wants to talk to you. I'm available for dinner next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. He wants to talk today. That's not possible. I'm booked solid until the weekend. She sighed heavily. This is your family, Eliza? Yes, and my family has suddenly discovered I'm worth talking to now that they know I'm successful. Forgive me if I don't drop everything to accommodate that revelation. That's not. It is. But it's okay. Tell Dad I'll call him this weekend. And Mom, I love you, but I'm done being the family afterthought. Things are going to be different moving forward. I ended the call before she could respond, letting my head fall back against my chair. The confrontation with Marcus had been easier than this conversation with my mother. Probably because with Marcus, I'd expected resistance. With my mother, some small part of me had still hoped for understanding. Rebecca knocked softly before entering my office. Your 12 o'clock is here. And Jamie called. Said it's important, but not urgent. Thank you. I'll call him after my meeting. The rest of the day passed in a blur of negotiations and conference calls. By the time I left the office, darkness had fallen, the city transformed into a glittering landscape of lights and shadows. I called Jamie on my way home. So, he answered without preamble, the family is in an uproar. I gathered as much from my conversation with Mom. It's glorious chaos, Eliza. Absolute madness. Dad's oscillating between pride that his daughter is a financial genius and anger that you deceived the family for years. Mom's telling everyone who'll listen that she always knew you had potential. And Marcus, he broke off laughing. What about Marcus? He showed up at Grandma Rose's house looking for leverage. Thought she might convince you to back off. I tensed. He shouldn't be bothering her with this. Oh, don't worry. She handled him beautifully. Served him tea, listened to his ranting about how unfair you're being, and then asked, very innocently, why he was subletting his apartment illegally if he's doing so well at his job. I couldn't help laughing. She didn't. She absolutely did. Said if he couldn't afford the apartment honestly, perhaps he should find somewhere more within his means. Suggested a nice starter home in the suburbs. The suburbs? Marcus? He'd rather live in his car. Exactly. He stormed out. But not before she told him that perhaps being knocked down a peg would help him develop some character. God, I love that woman. She loves you too. Said to tell you she's proud of you, but to remember what she said about revenge and aftertastes. I smiled, remembering our conversation. Noted. How are you holding up in the middle of all this? Me? I'm having the time of my life. It's like watching a reality show, but with people I'm related to. His tone softened. Seriously though, are you okay? This can't be easy. I'm fine. I hesitated. Actually, that's not true. It's harder than I expected. Not the confrontation with Marcus, but everything else. The questions, the sudden interest in my life, the realizations about how little they really knew me all these years. They never tried to know you, Eliza. That's on them, not you. Maybe, but I didn't exactly make it easy either. You shouldn't have had to. His voice was firm. Family is supposed to support you no matter what, not just when you're successful enough to be interesting. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy building an empire to notice. I laughed. Fair point. What happens now, do you think? Now? Now the real work begins. They know who you are, what you've accomplished. The question is, what do you want from them moving forward? It was a good question, one I hadn't fully considered until that moment. What did I want? Validation, respect, apologies, or something deeper, more fundamental, the belonging I'd always craved but never quite found? I don't know, I admitted. I just know I'm done hiding. Good. It's about time the world met the real Eliza Winters. Starting with the Winters family. Especially them. He paused. Marcus asked me about your company today. Wanted to know how big it really is. What did you tell him? That he should ask you himself. That maybe it's time he started seeing you as a person worth knowing, not just a space to be filled. Thank you, Jamie. For everything. That's what family is supposed to do, Eliza. The real kind, not the kind that only shows up when there's something to gain. After we hung up, I stood on my balcony watching the city, my city, spread out before me like a map of possibilities. Somewhere out there, Marcus was reconsidering everything he thought he knew about his waste of space sister. My parents were recalibrating their understanding of the daughter they'd overlooked, and I was standing at a crossroads, unsure which path to take next. The empire I'd built had given me power, security, and vindication, but standing alone at the top was starting to feel hollow. Maybe Grandma Rose was right. Maybe there was something bitter in the taste of revenge, even when served as professionally as I'd managed today. My phone buzzed with a text. From Marcus, of all people. We need to talk. Not about the apartment, about everything. Lunch tomorrow? I stared at the message, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him stew in uncertainty the way I'd stewed in invisibility for years. But another part, the part that still remembered building sandcastles with him at the beach before competition and comparison poisoned our relationship, wanted to see if something could be salvaged from the wreckage of our siblinghood. Noon. The cafe at Riverside Park. I typed back, "Don't be late." His response came immediately. "I'll be there." And Eliza? "I'm sorry. For everything." Words were easy. Actions harder. But it was a start. I looked out at my city again, the buildings I owned scattered among the skyline, like pieces of myself I'd distributed across the landscape. For years, I'd defined myself by what I'd built, what I owned, what I'd accomplished while no one was looking. Now it was time to figure out who Eliza Winters was when everyone was watching. The waste of space had claimed her space in the world. Now it was time to fill it with something more meaningful than revenge. I arrived at the Riverside Park Cafe 20 minutes early, selecting a table with a clear view of both entrances. It was a tactical choice. I wanted to see Marcus before he saw me, to observe his approach, his demeanor, his level of contrition. The maitre d' recognized me immediately, escorting me to my preferred corner table with a view of the park's central fountain. "The usual, Ms. Winters?" he asked, pulling out my chair. "Yes, thank you, Anthony, and I'm expecting my brother. He'll probably arrive looking slightly lost." Anthony smiled discreetly. "I'll keep an eye out." I ordered a sparkling water while waiting, resisting the urge to check my emails or make calls. This meeting required my full attention, a rarity in my carefully scheduled life. The cafe hummed with lunchtime conversations. Business meetings disguised as casual meals. Friends catching up over expensive salads. It was one of my first property investments. A struggling restaurant I'd purchased and revitalized 8 years ago, keeping the original chef but updating everything else. At precisely noon, I spotted Marcus through the window, approaching with uncharacteristic hesitation. His normally confident stride was measured, tentative. He'd dressed down from his usual business attire, wearing dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that our mother had given him last Christmas. A deliberate choice, I suspected, reminding me of our shared history, our connection beyond the professional confrontation of yesterday. Anthony intercepted him at the door, guiding him to my table. Marcus's eyes scanned the restaurant as he walked, taking in the elegant decor, the well-heeled clientele, the subtle markers of exclusivity. Recognition dawned on his face as he reached me. "You own this place too, don't you?" he asked instead of a greeting. "Good afternoon to you too, Marcus." I gestured to the chair opposite mine. "Yes, Riverside Cafe is one of my properties." He sat down, placing his phone face down on the table, a small courtesy I hadn't expected. "How many businesses do you own in this city?" "That's what you want to discuss? My portfolio?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. No. Sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this. He gestured vaguely around us. Around who you really are. I'm the same person I've always been. You just never bothered to look beyond your preconceptions. A waiter appeared with menus, saving Marcus from having to respond immediately. After ordering a niçoise salad for me, steak frites for him, we fell into an awkward silence that stretched between us like a physical presence. Finally, Marcus spoke. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about respect and worth. And you were right. The admission seemed to cost him something. I've measured people by their achievements, their status, their usefulness to me. I raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly self-aware. I'm capable of introspection when sufficiently motivated. A hint of his usual sarcasm, but tempered with something new. Humility, perhaps. Finding out your little sister owns half the city is pretty motivating. Not half, maybe a quarter. I allowed myself a small smile. He actually laughed. A short, surprised sound. God, Eliza, how did you do it, really? So I told him. About the first property, a rundown fourplex I'd purchased with every penny I'd saved working 3 jobs after dropping out of college. About living in one unit while renovating the others on weekends. About reinvesting every cent of profit into the next property and the next. About creating Horizon Properties as a holding company when my portfolio grew too large to manage alone. I remember when you bought that fourplex, he said slowly. Dad said it was a money pit. It was. But it was my money pit. I sipped my water. The foundation was cracked, the plumbing was a disaster, and the electrical wasn't up to code. But the location was unbeatable, and I knew the city's development plans included revitalizing that neighborhood. How? How did you know that? I paid attention. I went to city council meetings. I read public records. I did the work, Marcus. Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. I watched as he cut into his steak, wondering if he was really listening, or merely going through the motions to get back in my good graces. I looked up Horizon Properties last night, he said after a few bites. The business journals call you the invisible titan of urban development. They say you've transformed neglected neighborhoods without displacing existing residents, that you offer affordable units in every luxury building, that you've quietly become one of the most influential forces in the city's growth. The press tends to exaggerate. Do they? Because it sounds like you've built something extraordinary while the rest of us weren't looking. He set down his fork. While I was dismissing you as a failure, I studied his face, searching for the familiar signs of manipulation, the calculated sincerity he'd perfected in childhood to charm our parents out of punishments. But all I saw was genuine regret, perhaps for the first time in our adult relationship. Why did you do it, Marcus? I asked quietly. Why spend so much energy making me feel small? He looked away, focusing on the fountain outside. I've been asking myself the same question since yesterday. The easy answer is jealousy. Jealousy? Of what? Your freedom, your clarity. He met my eyes again. You always knew who you were, what you wanted. Even as a kid you had this certainty about yourself that I never felt. I nearly choked on my water. Are you serious? I was the family disappointment. To our parents, maybe. But never to yourself. He leaned forward. Don't you see? I was exactly what they wanted. Business degree, corporate job, country club membership. The perfect son following the perfect path. But it was never what I wanted. It was what was expected. What did you want? The question seemed to surprise him. I don't know. That's the pathetic part. I never let myself figure it out. It was easier to follow the script, to become the person they always told me I should be, and resent me for not doing the same. Yes, the admission hung between us. Watching you forge your own path made me feel cowardly. So I convinced myself your choices were wrong, that the approved path was the only valid one. I considered his words, turning them over like unfamiliar objects. Never once had I imagined Marcus envying me, pitying me, yes, looking down on me, certainly, but envying my independence? It reframed our entire relationship. What happens now? I asked. That depends. He straightened his shoulders. I'd like to accept option 1. Pay the penalty, end the subletting, stay in the apartment under probationary status. That's a business decision. I'm asking about us. About this. I gestured between us. I want to try again. To get to know the sister I've been too blind to see. He offered a tentative smile. If she's willing to know me too, she might be. I returned his smile cautiously. But it won't be easy. There's a lot of history between us, Marcus. A lot of hurt. I know. But maybe we start with honesty. No more pretending to be who we're not. That sounds possible. We finished our meal discussing lighter topics. Childhood memories re-examined through our new understanding, mutual complaints about our parents, expectations, Grandma Rose's uncanny ability to see through everyone's facades. For the first time in decades, conversation with my brother flowed without underlying currents of competition or judgment. As we waited for the check, which I insisted on paying despite his protests, Marcus asked, "Have you told Mom and Dad about all this yet? About Horizon?" "Not in detail. They know I own your building and others. They don't know the full extent." He winced. "They're going to lose their minds when they realize how successful you are." "Probably." I signed the receipt without looking at the total. "But that's their problem, not mine." Would you? Would you be open to dinner at their house? All of us together? I think they deserve a chance to see who you really are, too." I hesitated. "I don't know, Marcus. I'm not sure I'm ready for the full family reconciliation tour." "What about just Grandma Rose, then, to start? She already knows everything." I smiled at his surprised expression. "She's known for years. Nothing gets past that woman." "Of course she has." He shook his head, laughing. "That explains so much about her cryptic comments over the years." We walked out together, pausing at the edge of the park. The autumn sun filtered through golden leaves, casting dappled shadows across the path. For a moment, we stood in silence, two adults finding their way back to a relationship that had fractured in childhood. "I've been thinking about what you said," Marcus finally spoke. "About needing to stand on my own, about not relying on Dad's connections or family money. And you're right. I've been playing it safe, following the path of least resistance." He turned to face me fully. "I want to change that. I've been working on a business plan for months, a boutique consulting firm focused on sustainable urban development. Something I actually care about, not just another corporate ladder to climb." "Sounds promising. The thing is, I need startup capital. And I don't want to ask Dad." He took a deep breath. "I'd like to pitch it to you, not as your brother, but as a potential investment opportunity, if you're interested." I studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine or another manipulation. "Why me?" "Because you built something real from nothing. Because you understand this industry better than anyone I know. Because I'd rather have you as a mentor than Dad as a benefactor." His eyes held mine steadily. "And because I want to earn your respect, not just as family but as a colleague." "Send the business plan to my office," I said after a moment. "I'll review it like any other investment opportunity. No promises. No special treatment." Relief and determination crossed his face. "That's all I'm asking for. A fair evaluation." "I can do that." I checked my watch. "I have a meeting in 30 minutes. "Of course." He hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me, awkwardly at first, then with genuine warmth. "Thank you, Eliza. Not just for lunch, but for, well, everything. We're not there yet, Marcus. This is just a beginning." "I know, but it's more than I deserved after how I've treated you." We parted ways at the park entrance, him heading toward the subway, me toward the waiting car where Rebecca would already be reviewing the afternoon schedule. I watched him walk away, his posture different somehow, less entitled, more purposeful. My phone buzzed with a text from Grandma Rose. "How did it go with your brother?" "Better than expected," I replied. "You were right. About him. About revenge." "I usually am, dear. Coming for Sunday dinner?" I hesitated, then typed, "Yes, but just with you for now. Baby steps. Proud of you. Love you more than all your buildings combined." I smiled, tucking my phone away as I slid into the car. Rebecca glanced up from her tablet, instantly alert to my mood. "Good lunch?" "Surprisingly so. The Williamson meeting is in 20 minutes. They've submitted a revised proposal for the waterfront development. Let me guess. They've suddenly included affordable housing units." She smiled. 15% of total units, with subsidized rent structures. Amazing how they found room in the budget after learning who owns the adjacent property they need for parking. Isn't it, though? I settled back as the car pulled into traffic. "Any word from Marcus about the apartment situation?" "His assistant called while you were at lunch. He's accepting option 1, penalty payment included. No pushback, no negotiation." "Interesting. Also, your father called 3 times. Your mother texted asking about dinner next weekend. And Jamie wants to know, and I quote, 'Did hell freeze over? Or did Marcus actually apologize?'" I laughed. "Tell Jamie the temperature in hell remains unchanged, but there may have been a slight cooling trend." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, calls, and decisions, the normal rhythm of my life as the invisible titan of urban development. Except I wasn't invisible anymore, at least not to the people who mattered most. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. That evening, I made an unscheduled stop at the Lexington Street property, my newest acquisition and the largest single purchase in Horizon's history. The renovation plans were ambitious, converting an aging office building into mixed-use space with retail, offices, and residential units, including dedicated floors for affordable housing and artist studios. As I walked through the empty lobby, I imagined what it would become. Not just another luxury address, but a community, a place where people from different backgrounds could build something together. It was the vision that had driven me from the beginning, long before I had the resources to realize it on this scale. My phone rang. Jamie, calling for an update. "So?" he asked without preamble. "Is Marcus still breathing, or did you eviscerate him over appetizers?" "He's intact. We actually had a civilized conversation." "I'm disappointed. I was hoping for bloodshed." "Sorry to disappoint. It turns out revenge isn't quite as satisfying as I expected." "Speak for yourself. I've been enjoying this immensely." His tone softened. "But seriously, are you okay with all of it?" I looked around the empty space, seeing not what it was, but what it could become. "I think I am. For the first time in a long time." "Good. You deserve this, Eliza. The recognition, the respect, the whole package." "Maybe, or maybe none of us get what we deserve, good or bad. We just get what we build for ourselves." "Look at you, getting all philosophical. Success has made you wise." I laughed. "Not wise. Just tired of carrying the weight of being underestimated." After hanging up, I continued my solitary tour of the building. On the top floor, I stepped out onto the rooftop terrace, gazing at the city stretched out before me. My city. Not because I owned pieces of it, but because I'd invested myself in its future, in its potential to be better tomorrow than it was today. The wind picked up, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and lives being lived in all their messy complexity. Somewhere out there, Marcus was possibly rethinking his life choices. My parents were grappling with the daughter they never really knew. Grandma Rose was probably knitting and smiling to herself, satisfied that her grandchildren were finally finding their way back to each other. And me? I was standing at the highest point of my newest acquisition, wondering what came next. The empire I'd built had given me power, security, and now vindication. But standing alone at the top was no longer enough. Perhaps that was the lesson in all of this, that success without connection was an empty achievement. That buildings, no matter how impressive, were just structures without the relationships that filled them with meaning. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Marcus had sent his business plan, hours after our lunch. The subject line read, "No special treatment requested, just honest feedback from someone I respect." I smiled, putting the phone away without opening it. There would be time for that tomorrow. Tonight was for reflection, for acknowledging how far I'd come and how much further I still had to go. 3 days later, I sat in Grandma Rose's garden, helping her prepare vegetables for Sunday dinner. The familiar ritual of washing, peeling, and chopping connected us across generations, words unnecessary in the comfortable rhythm we'd established over the years. "He's really trying, you know," she said finally, nodding toward the house where Marcus could be seen through the window, awkwardly attempting to set the table. "I know." I sliced a carrot with precision. "His business plan is actually quite good. Innovative. Thoughtful. Not what I expected. People can surprise you when you give them the chance." She patted my hand. "Even family. Especially family. You knew all along what I was building, didn't you? Not just Horizon, but everything." She smiled, the lines around her eyes deepening with affection. "I knew you had it in you to build something extraordinary. The details didn't matter as much as the spirit behind them. Why didn't you tell the others?" "It wasn't my story to tell." She resumed peeling potatoes. "Some things people need to discover for themselves. The revelation means more that way." "Is that why you let Marcus call me a waste of space at your birthday dinner? So he could discover the truth for himself?" She winced. "No. That was a mistake. I should have stopped him immediately, and I'm sorry I didn't." Her eyes, still sharp despite her years, held mine. Quote, "But sometimes our worst moments lead to our greatest growth. Look at what's happened since." Through the window, I watched as my brother meticulously aligned the silverware, referring occasionally to a table-setting diagram he'd apparently looked up on his phone. The sight was both comical and touching, the golden child trying his hardest at something unfamiliar, determined to get it right. "I've reviewed his business plan," I said, returning to the carrots. "It's viable. Smart, even. He has a genuine passion for sustainable development." "Are you going to invest?" "Yes. But not because he's my brother. Because it's a good investment with solid potential returns." Grandma Rose smiled knowingly. "Of course. Strictly business." "It is," I insisted. "The fact that it might help rebuild our relationship is entirely secondary." "If you say so, dear." She gathered the potato peelings. "Take these to the compost bin, would you? And tell your brother dinner's in 30 minutes. I carried the peelings outside, depositing them in the compost bin at the edge of the garden. Marcus joined me, looking slightly frazzled. "Is the table acceptable?" he asked, only half joking. "I redid it 3 times. It's perfect." I closed the compost bin. "Grandma says dinner's in 30 minutes. He nodded, then blurted, "Have you had a chance to look at my proposal?" "I have. And I have some questions, some suggestions, and potentially an offer." I kept my tone professional. "We can discuss it tomorrow at my office." 10 o'clock. Relief washed over his face. "Thank you, Eliza, really. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to be a demanding investor. This isn't a handout." "I wouldn't want it to be." His sincerity was palpable. "I want to earn this, to build something real, like you did. It won't be easy. The best things never are." He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about what you said, about knowing my place. You were right, but not in the way I thought. My place isn't above you or anyone else. It's wherever I create value, wherever I contribute something meaningful." I studied him, this familiar stranger who was my brother, seeing perhaps for the first time the person he could become rather than the person he had been. "That's actually profound, Marcus." He laughed softly. "Even a waste of space can have moments of clarity. Don't call yourself that. Why not? You turned street garbage into a badge of honor. Maybe I can do the same with waste of space. Maybe you can." I smiled. "But I think you'll find it's more satisfying to define yourself by what you build than by what others once called you." We walked back to the house together, Not quite in step, but no longer deliberately out of sync. Through the window, I could see Grandma Rose watching us, satisfaction evident in her expression. She'd lived long enough to know that family reconciliations were rarely quick or complete, but this was a beginning. Tentative, fragile, but real. 6 months later, Marcus and I stood on the rooftop of the completed Lexington Street development, glasses of champagne in hand as we surveyed the city below. His consulting firm occupied one floor of the building, my offices another. The arrangement had raised eyebrows in the business community. The Winters siblings, once famously estranged, now working together in unexpected harmony. To new beginnings, Marcus proposed a toast, and to the sister who taught me the true meaning of success. To building something that matters, I countered, clinking my glass against his. With people who matter. Below us, the mixed-use building hummed with life, artists creating in subsidized studios, families making homes in affordable units, businesses thriving in thoughtfully designed spaces. It wasn't perfect, but it was meaningful, a physical manifestation of the values I'd built my company on. "Have you told the family about Sunday?" Marcus asked, referring to the upcoming ceremony where I would receive the city's Urban Visionary Award. "Just Grandma Rose. And you, obviously. Mom and Dad would want to be there." "Maybe." I wasn't convinced. "We're making progress, but we're not there yet." Fair enough. He didn't push. A new restraint he was still practicing. "Wherever you are in the journey is exactly where you should be." I smiled, recognizing my grandmother's wisdom in his words. "When did you get so philosophical?" "I had a good teacher. Several, actually." He gestured at the city spread before us. "This view never gets old, does it?" "Never." I sipped my champagne, thinking of how far we'd both come since that disastrous birthday dinner. You know what Grandma Rose told me last week? She said the greatest achievement isn't building an empire, it's building a life you don't need to escape from. Wise woman. The wisest. I turned to face him directly. "I'm proud of you, Marcus. What you're building with your firm. It's good work. Important work." He blinked rapidly, emotion flickering across his face. "That means more than you know." We stood in companionable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The brother who had once called me a waste of space. The sister who had owned the building he lived in. Both of us transformed by the simple, difficult act of seeing each other clearly for the first time. The waste of space had claimed her space in the world. The golden child had found his authentic path. And together, we were building something neither of us could have created alone. A bridge across the chasm that had separated us for so long. That bridge would always need maintenance, always require attention and care. But it was worth the effort. Because some spaces, when filled with understanding and genuine respect, transform from empty voids into the foundations upon which everything else can be built. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.